What a video I've got for you guys. So many so interesting games and all released on Windows in 1995. What a year. So let's jump straight into it. Simtown is SimCity's younger cousin. On a face value it's the same game just on a smaller scale, so instead of working from zero to huge sprawling metropolis, you're building up a small town. You never aim for anything bigger, you just want your little town to grow a tiny bit bigger and get a lot of cozier for your inhabitants. Which caused some of Original's in-depth to go away and be replaced by cute, colorful and detailed cartoon graphics. Simtown is clearly aimed at younger audience, a future players of bigger sim games. And you know what? It's cool. Cause while it may not be as deep of a game as its older siblings, it's quite good, even if you're an adult, if you're only in the right mindset that is. So your aim here is to nurture a small town community rather than build a huge city. You start slow, similarly to SimCity, by building houses, roads, schools, workplaces and various civic buildings. While there's a lot of variety in design of these, there's not much in what they offer sadly. So often the choice between continental white and classic brown house can realistically be just down to personal aesthetic preferences. What is quite well represented in SimTower, however, is the ecology, and by that I mean you'll have to plant trees, take care of the rubbish disposal and keep water and air quality in check. So it's more of an educational title rather than the full-fledged simulation. Which makes sense if you consider the fact that you no longer need to care for supplying and distribution of energy within the town, or money. Yeah, there's no money in Simtown. For everything that you want to build or construct, you pay with water, trees and crops. Even more so, remember the RCI from SimCity? So, residential, commercial and industry requirements meter that showed you which of these was in highest demand? You know, the meter you based your city's future expansions on. It's gone. All you have now is Sorta RC. Sorta cause there's no borrowed number that could give you the measurable impression of how much one is more needed than the other. You have a seesaw swing with R building on one side and C on the other. It's not readable for those who require precise data to plan their progress further. And that is where we hit the proverbial nail in the head. Just like I stated initially, Simtown is a game for kids. Sure, you can play and enjoy it as an adult, but just don't expect same engagement, same depth, or I dread to say it, same fun from it. It's cool to check it out once every few years, but you're not gonna come back to it, same way you do to, let's say, SimCity 2000. Sonic the Hedgehog was a huge game beginning of the 90s. Next to Super Mario Bros, Sonic was an example of the best in the genre and a benchmark for most platformers for years to come. It was a dream that all owners of systems other than that of Sega wanted to experience in one way or another, to play it, to have access to. But no one did. Not until 1995 at least, when suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, Sonic CD appeared on Windows 95 PCs. And not only PC owners who needed a good platformer got one, but they've got one of the GOATs. Sure, we had cool games like Just Jackrabbit, Rayman or even Earthworm Jim, but all we really secretly wanted all that time was one of the two legends. And that year, Sega delivered. I don't know if it was their own initiative or if Microsoft showered them with cases full of many thousands of green people from history times. I wonder if anyone will get this reference. But the point stood, we got the game. And it was awesome. Nothing was lost in translation, Sonic had all his iconic moves and all the levels presented in Sega CD Original were here. The story, while dreadfully basic and blunt, was in full swing and unchanged as well. And most importantly, it was a blast to play. And while Sonic was never in any of its iterations a huge game, usually just a few zones divided into smaller acts, it was incredibly addicting and seeing everything it had to offer, because of the speed of the game runs at, required at least few playthroughs. As I said all that, I'm gonna come clean now. I like Sonic, but I'm not a huge fan. I enjoy it once in a while, especially as a pick up and play for 5-10 minutes type of a game, but it's just too fast for me to play for longer periods. Between the two, so Sonic or Mario, I will always without fail choose Super Frog. Space Quest 6 Roger Wilco in Spinal Frontier is the sixth and last part of original Space Quest series of Sierra's adventure games. And as adventure titles go, this one's excellent, if you like wacky, full of pop culture parodies kind of humor. Also a great conclusion to a long-running series, and while it can be played standalone, it's best if you at the very least played former 5th part before, cause this one's building on its story. You play as Roger Wilco once again, and despite saving the universe countless times, your superiors charge you with various violations of galactic law and deprive you of all honors, demoting you to Space Janitor again. This, however, will not change the fact that once more, despite being the butt of all jokes, you will stand up to the challenge and save the universe. Or not, cause you know, same as in most Sierra's games, you can die in Space Quest 6. On a side note, this time at the very least it's not an instant game over, but lets you restart from just before you died. So that's a welcome, even if late in the franchise change. Space Quest 6 does not hold off, it's chock full of jabs at modern at the time pop culture, at sci-fi movies, and none of them are given a hands-off treatment, so if you're into sci-fi and like odd quirky humor, you'll have a time of your life playing the game. That said, many of the puzzles sadly are a bit off, meaning they're not always based in logic and may require a creative or even worse trial and error approach, which is the worst possible kind of puzzles you can find in an adventure game. All that said, Space Quest 6 is fun, so if you're at the very least at all into point-and-click adventure games, you'll have a lot of fun with it. If you're not, give it a try, cause perhaps the hilarious over-the-top situations and dad jokes will just make it the game for you. If all that fails, then, well, let's move on to our next game. Star Trek The Next Generation: A Final Unity is a hybrid adventure game with some light strategy elements and a lot of fun for both fans of adventure games and Star Trek alike. Me? I'm of the latter kind. Batman's leaning towards the former, as he's saying that the adventure games remind him of his shenanigans over the years and all the cases he had to solve. So we can actually enjoy this one together. Go figure. In Final Unity you play as legendary Captain Jean-Luc Picard of USS Enterprise NCC-1701D, and I don't care what others say, he is the best Star Trek captain of all time. Go ahead, come at me and destroy me in the comments below, I dare you. Anyway, the gameplay is composed of traditional point-and-click adventuring with free-roam space exploration, diplomatic encounters and tactical ship-to-ship combat. All of the TV show's cast reprises their roles, and believe it or not, they're short of magnificent. Story-wise, Enterprise, while on a routine patrol around Romulan Neutral Zone, intercepts a distress signal of Guardian ships seeking asylum in Federation space. As it turns out, Garidians are in a search of legendary Guardian's fifth scroll, which could prevent the war on Garid. Upon closer investigation and weighing all the implications, Captain Picard agrees to assist them. The gameplay is divided into two main sections. First, on board of the Enterprise, where you're basically waiting for the Enterprise to arrive at the next chosen destination and can use various areas of the main bridge and seek advice of your crew members. Which, you know, our beloved Jean-Luc always did, gathering all his senior officers in the TV series to pick their brains and seek opposing points of view. Second section are the away missions, where you'll be visiting different space stations and alien worlds. This is also where you control the away team. Away missions are a pure point-and-click adventure and follow all the tropes of the genre, like inventory management and puzzle solving. While story parts of the game are mainly linear, they can branch out a little bit depending on the choices made during conversations. To summarize, if you're a fan of the series, there was no better game to immerse yourself in 1995. Though there was also a Deep Space Nine Harbinger, but that's a story for another video and it didn't come out on Windows. Before I say anything else, let me lay a bit of a background for you. At least for those who are not long-time subscribers of this channel. I love Star Trek, to bits. It's the best. Not gonna go into details, but that's the case here, and I always preferred it to Star Wars. Reasons are many and ranging from deep to superficial, but that's also another case of the subject not for today. But let me assure you, it doesn't mean that I don't like Star Wars, and that this next game, so Rebel Assault 2, The Hidden Empire, will get a lacking coverage here. Quite the contrary. As FMV pure action games go, this one's pretty good. So Rebel Assault 2 The Hidden Empire is a FMV on-rail shooter, meaning backgrounds are full motion videos and you're fighting against various enemies in different game modes overlaid on top of those backgrounds. Story-wise, following the events of the first Rebel Assault game, you're once again playing as starfighter pilot codenamed Rookie 1. While scouting the Drayton Nebula region, and I'm sorry cause my lack of in-depth knowledge of Star Wars lore may have butchered the pronunciation of that, you receive a distress call from a freighter, straight from the region where ships are known to go missing. So naturally you decide to investigate, and what you find there is no freighter, but a secret hidden Imperial presence plotting to destroy the Rebel Alliance once again. All the way through the game's story you'll meet many characters who will aid you in dismantling the Imperial plot but will require your help in return. Fair exchange in my books. Unlike most other FMV games, Rebel Assault 2, while still being largely linear and only ever giving you a chance to pick alternate routes a few odd times throughout its run, it's really varied in terms of gameplay sets. So you'll be flying an X-Wing, in Millennium Falcon, you'll even ride the speeder bikes and obviously will fight on foot too. All that makes for an engaging and fun action. Now, acting in the cutscenes is another thing entirely. It's beyond bad. It's so wood and stiff that it balances on that magical invisible border of going from tragically bad to amazingly good because of it being so bad. Sadly, it never really goes through it, and most of the time it either feels cheesy or lackluster at best. That said, we have to keep in mind how limited action FMV games are overall, so there's only as much as you can do with a medium. And gameplay-wise, I think they've done a good job of it. It's fast, action-packed, a bit too easy perhaps, but varied and fun. So if you don't mind simplistic shooters, criminally bad acting, and are a fan of Star Wars, it's definitely one to track down. I'm nowhere near as experienced or knowledgeable in flight combat simulations as I am in, let's say, role-playing or turn-based strategy games. It doesn't mean that I didn't play them, just that I am an amateur and a Sunday pilot at best, rather than well-versed and comfortable at them player. That preface aside, Su-27 Flanker on Windows is a very accurate and comprehensive simulation that's tackling a bit touchy today's subject. as it covers a variety of missions over Ukraine's Crimea region. But this channel is not about politics, so that's where I'll end the subject. The flying model is very solid, very true to life, and the game is simulation aficionado's dream, as it's challenging but also feels really rewarding. In fact, as it stands, Su-27 Flanker was apparently so realistic in its flight dynamic, crafts, inner workings, weapons and physics that it was used as a conversion trainer for real-life pilots. All the elements of your craft move as they do in real life when appropriate. So popping an air brake extends the little jack within, the rudders, the undercarriage and hydraulics all work as in real plane, and it's actually visually represented in the game too. It was mind-blowing for the time. And as far as I know, all the other enemy craft present in the game are remade with the same detail-oriented philosophy. The fact that there's simple yet powerful mission editor, including allowing you to modify existing and create entirely new missions, is just a cherry on Flanker's already oversweetened pie. But do you know what's most important about all of it though? When you finally learn how to conquer the beast, how to fly it and not die instantly in an encounter, and how to turn it into deadly machine it deserves to be, it becomes really fun. Cause then, you can really feel as if you were there, inside the cockpit. I liked Flanker, but I sucked at it. But I can see and appreciate what was capable of in the right hands. So, if yours are, don't waste your time listening to me and get the game and check it out. The 11th Hour is a sequel to earlier popular The Seventh Guest, and also a first-person horror mystery adventure. And most interestingly, it's a game that brought the bankruptcy of its developer, Trilobite Games. Reason being what you'd expect. The 11th Hour did not sell nowhere near as well as they hoped for. Oh well, such is life. The story takes us to the haunted mansion, where we play as Carl Denning, seeking our disappeared girlfriend Robin Morales, who mysteriously vanished while researching the haunted mansion of the once evil mastermind Henry Stauf. Oh, did I mention it that it's the same house as in the first game just years later? No? Then well, it is. So yeah. And it looks really good, meaning the devs really put attention to changing its appearance so that it would be clear that it's the same location, just in much worse worn out state. Gameplay wise, the 11th Hour is not far off from its predecessor, and you once more will walk around the huge house watching creepy FMV sequences and solving logic puzzles. And they are demanding, even more so than in previous game. Some of them can actually take hours to figure out. Graphics are considerably much better than in the past, this time in high resolution, high color, adding to the feeling of creepiness and danger with all those fine gruesome details clearly visible on the screen. And the music and sounds are top notch too. So what went wrong? Well, despite all I just said, which seems to be superlatives only, simply put, it's not a great game. It's a-okay at best, and given that the horror adventure genre was already targeting a very small subset of all gamers, chances of it being popular vanished along with the spirit in the mansion itself. Boys and girls, we've got a good one. And it's Gabriel Knight 2 The Beast Within, a direct follow-up to earlier as good Sins of the Fathers. Gabriel Knight, our protagonist, officially a former bookstore owner, is really the last offspring of generations of so-called Schattenjägers, so shadow hunters whose task is to find and fight evil forces all around the world. After the events of the first game, Gabriel and his assistant Miss Grace Nakimura moved to Ritter Castle in Bavaria to his family's historical home, where Gabriel, based on initially seemingly simple case of a young girl killed by a wolf, must uncover and cleanse the mysterious Hunter Society and uncover Bavaria's dark past and secrets. While The Beast Within is a real full-fledged point-and-click adventure, it is also full of numerous FMV sequences that seem to trigger with most interactions. It is not just a simple and linear FMV game though, let's make this clear, and you'll have to bring your Adventure A game to complete it. Getting yourself accustomed with many characters, following long dialogue trees and learning from them, doing detective work, figuring out what, where, when and how happened, and solving many puzzles. Both Gabriel and Grace are playable characters in Beast Within during different alternating sections of the story. The game is a masterpiece of blood-chilling, suspenseful, well-told mystery that instantly became a benchmark of how games using FMV sequences should look, feel and play. And that the watching of said videos should not be used as a gameplay mechanic, but rather serve as a background, adding a lot to the ambience of the plot. I mean, Phantasmagoria we spoke about not so long ago was not a bad game, but compared to Sins of the Fathers, it's like a fast food joint leaflet compared to a good hardcover novel. That's how good Gabriel Knight 2 is. And if you're at all into adventure games, especially those that are on a more dark, heavier, mysterious side, you're not gonna be able to put this one down. The Incredible Machine 2, same as its predecessor, does not offer any real story, any world building, or even any reason to complete it, other than the Rube Goldberg contraptions galore in each of the game's more or less 200 levels. The gameplay idea is that simple. You're presented with a task, which is usually but not always something very basic, like get the ball into a basket, move the mouse to a particular place, or something akin to that, and a stage where some parts of the machine are already pre-assembled and unmovable. Be it platforms, fans, trampolines, whatever. It's irrelevant, as these are your framework upon which you need to add on others to complete the pre-assigned task. This is where the game drags you in and doesn't let you go until you're either so tired that you need to go to sleep or completed it in its entirety. Sounds stupid, I know, I too once was not a believer, but it's difficult to show within just an odd couple of minutes long video clip and a few words how addictive the Incredible Machine 2 is. On a side note, Incredible Machine 2 is also known as Incredible Machine 3.0, so you know, while the devs clearly knew how to make an amazing title, they had no clue how confusing this may be from a marketing point of view and for a potential buyer. Or they were geniuses banking on selling the same game twice and I'm the idiot here. Well, we'll never know. I mean, we do know that I'm not the sharpest tool, but that still does not clear the whole thing with games naming. Still, the Incredible Machine 2 is a marvel, and while first levels are beyond easy, allowing you to familiarize yourself with controls and study how many of the items that you can add to the quote-unquote machines work, the game will pose more and more demanding challenges for you as you go through it. And it's not always going to be giving you a more difficult task, as often it will just limit the number of kinds or things you can add to it. So you will have to think creatively out of the box and from time to time even approach a particular level more than once just to figure it out. And when you do, it's hella rewarding. And since Incredible Machine's graphics are very cartoony, it's an interesting title to the young as it is to those older. Alone in the Dark was incredibly popular series at the time and one of, if not the first in series of cinematic survival horror games. And cinematic is a keyword here, with three-dimensional real-time characters on pre-rendered backgrounds with camera angles switching to suit the location you're in. All that gave the game the movie-like feel and made it easier to immerse yourself in a story. It also made combat unnecessarily more difficult than it had to be, with often switching viewpoints and odd angles you were sometimes stuck in. And in a survival horror where combat along with adventure puzzling is all you really do, it's not a good design choice. That said, that design choice was also reason for game's popularity, so what do I know, who am I to question it, and most importantly, why am I talking about a different game than the one that you're watching? Well, I suppose you've noticed some similarities already. While Timegate is not a gory gothic horror title, it uses the same polished engine that the Alone in the Dark games did, uplifting graphics to SVGA and sound design considerably. That said, underneath it all, the same engine powers the little gears running the gaming machine, with all of its good and bad that we've just spoke about. This time, you're William Tibbs, American in Paris, whose girlfriend was kidnapped and taken through time to medieval France. Which, while not something you'd like to see, personally, I wouldn't mind a little one-on-one action with a time machine, just for shits and giggles, you know, to secure an odd billion or two for a more comfortable future. Anyway, you obviously have to find and rescue a love, and in process figure out what makes you resonate so intensely with a Knights Templar. Same as in Alone in the Dark, gameplay will circle around combat and adventure puzzling, and if you're a fan of the classic, you'll love Timegate too. If you weren't, it's hardly a game to change your mind. A renegade Soviet commander based in a remote secret location in Mexican desert is threatening to strike United States with chemical weaponry. What a start! Batman's a chemical threat to me too anytime he munches on anything with jalapenos. And we don't want that to happen, right? I mean, either fall of US and mine from Batman's toxic farts, right? So, given that as per usual Batman's on a mission of greater importance, this time if you're curious to check how many packages of chips a single person can eat before puking, he's at 23 now, but at least from where I'm sitting he doesn't look too good. He's red and there's that odd thick vein popping along his heartbeat on his forehead. Anyway, he's clearly not up for the task now. So, since he's unavailable, you're the one to save US once again. And I know for a fact that you're more than capable of doing so. Tomcat Alley is a FMV action shooter with an emphasis on the FMV and action relegated to short bits here and there. It was converted from Sega CD and sadly not much if any care at all was given to that conversion, because the videos are as grainy as they were in original. It's not to say that Tomcat Alley is a bad FMV game, not the case really, it's just not very polished, simplistically designed, serving same videos time after time again, just mixed in order, and plainly put, by 1995, not as good as games we had on our PCs already. So both Rebel Assault titles and Hive to name a few. Tomcat Alley can be fun for a single playthrough, and as such it's worth giving it a go. But I don't see anyone really playing it more than that. Torin's Passage is beautiful. If you put it next to Tomcat Alley we just spoke about and totally ignore the fact that they're entirely different games and will just want to compare them on their graphical design, Torin's Passage will blow the former FMV fiasco out of the water. The entire game feels like a high-budget cartoon or a Disney's movie, with incredibly detailed characters, colorful lush backgrounds, super smooth animations and tons of little clips depicting your choices and interactions with characters and objects. It's a visual treat unlike many and a game in a class of its own, at least presentation-wise. Let's talk about the gameplay though, as I think it's clear by now that I'm really impressed with how it looks. Torin's Passage is a humorous point-and-click adventure where you play as titular Torin, a young boy who one day finds his parents mysteriously imprisoned with a spell by an evil sorceress Lysantia. So you and your purple cat-like creature Boogle have to embark on a quest to find a way to break that spell and confront the villain. On your way, you're not only going to discover your true origin and importance in the world, but will also witness your friend's magical awakening, as he will learn how to shapeshift into various objects, which coincidentally will be useful in solving many of the game's puzzles. And these are a healthy mix of inventory and environmental ones, with the earlier being in the most cases very basic, tedious even at times, and the latter requiring some thought put behind how to solve them. Al Lowe of Larry Laffer fame is responsible for Torin's Passage, assuring games high quality and omnipresent humor and hilarity. So, if you enjoy adventure games, this one's a no-brainer. Go and get it. And if you don't, it still may be worth checking out, as the quality of presentation may just sway you to complete it despite that. Now, it's not going to be an overstatement when I say that when it comes to fishing simulations, I'm out of my depth. It seems though that I'm still good at my cringe puns. Trophy Bus is just that, a fishing simulation. I don't fish, in reality that is, so my knowledge of what's involved in it is partly based on movies, partly on what I've heard from friends who do so, and partly on video games. From first of the three, I know that in movies they always catch the big fish, without fail. From second, that my friends always seem to consume obscene amounts of alcohol while doing so, and no one ever mentions fish after, so I'm not even sure that they manage to catch anything really, other than cold and hangover that is. And finally, from games I learned that if you don't know what you're doing, where to go, what gear to pick for a location chosen, and most importantly which lure for a particular fish, you're either gonna catch fish no bigger than the goldfish, or a case of growing boredom and restlessness. So, like I said, I don't fish and know very little about it. But from what I've gathered about our today's game online, I can tell you that Trophy Bus is pretty darn good. Mind you, I didn't play it myself. It allows you either to take part in Bassmasters tournaments, start a fishing career, or just free play on a chosen lake for leisure. Furthermore, it features encyclopedia quality set of content other than the gameplay itself that could teach you not only about all the ins and outs of fishing, but also give you hints and pointers what to do in certain troublesome to newbie situations. The graphics are quite decent too, and overall, apparently, the game feels like the next best thing when you cannot fish in real life. So, do as you wish with that knowledge and let me know if what I found about it is at all true. I love Marvel's comic book heroes, and even though I grew up with both, I prefer Marvel's to the ones from DC. I like that most of the comic books are set in real-world locations and that the characters all feel human, more or less. Meaning that they all have their personalities outside of being heroes, they have faults, they make mistakes, they are not perfect or written to fulfill one and one role only. Yeah, I'm looking at you, faultless, indestructible and perfectly boring Superman. What? Oh, no, I did not mean to you, buddy. You're obviously the best. I mean, who can compare to the Amazing Man, but I mean Batman. Yeah, Batman. No one, that's who. Oof, that was a close one. Anyway, point is, I love Marvel, so being able to play a Marvel, let alone Spider-Man themed game on my Windows PC back in the 90s was like a dream come true. It meant being able to hopefully relive what I read about in the comic books on the screen of my PC interactively. On a side note, that's also a reason why, regardless of the theme and genre, I generally speaking prefer games over movies and books, because they offer interactive experiences and not just a record of these in one format or another. I seem to be all over the place with this one today. So Venom and Spider-Man Separation Anxiety was just the title I dreamed of playing. It is loosely based on a Venom saga from comics and allows you to play as friendly neighborhood Spidey or his arch-nemesis Venom. Because believe it or not, they've teamed up to defeat an evil orc that is trying to create 5 super soldiers using 5 of Venom's symbiote spawns. For all the intents and purposes, Separation Anxiety is a side-scrolling beat-em-up in which you can play alone as either of the protagonists or with a friend in co-op. They can punch, kick, swing on their spiderwebs or even perform few special moves, but these are not the easiest to pull off. As you go about the game annihilating bodies, you'll be able to pick up icons representing other Marvel heroes like Captain America, Hawkeye, Ghost Rider or Daredevil to name a few, and they can be later summoned to aid you in especially difficult situations. As beat-em-ups go, however, this one doesn't stick out from the thousands of better titles available in the arcades. Well, other than using Marvel characters and being playable at home, that is. So while it's a decent and fun with a friend game, it's far from genre's best. And also the game's progress is saved at very specific points, so if you die long after the last one of these and before the next, you may end up having to replay a few levels once more. Which, you know, is something that did not happen even in the arcades, and we all know how much these were customized towards milking customers for their money. All in all, Separation Anxiety will be a treat to fans of Spidey or superheroes in general, or beat-em-ups for that matter too. Others may very well just go ahead and ignore it. Quite a wide spread of genres and games today, right? It's clear that 1995 was definitely a year when Windows gained traction and decent games started appearing on the platform in heaps. But that's not all of it yet. I have a few more for the year to share with you before we move on to as good if not better 1996 next after. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. If you didn't, well then there's thumbs down there too. But I suppose you wouldn't have persevered up to this point if you really didn't. Around 60% of you are not subscribed and there's currently no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend you the next episode or not, other than subscribing and hitting that bell, that is. And when you hit that bell, whenever the new video is out, YouTube will actually send you a small and friendly notification about it, so you wouldn't miss it. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon and YouTube memberships are a great way of doing so. They will help me release better content and also they get first dibs on all new videos before they're publicly accessible on YouTube. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are great too. I would like to take a moment here and thank all the YouTube creators from whose videos short bits were taken to serve as a background to my commentary. They're amazing and stars among the retro community. You will find names of their channels at the top of the screen when their footage is running and also in the video description below. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.